Hi, my name is Jamie Zabel, and I will be interviewing for the Instructional Coach full-time release position with Baxter Community Schools, TLS. So as many of you know, I have been at Baxter Schools for 5 years, and I've worked in the capacity of middle school and high school social studies, as well as being a member of our IPI team, a pathway leader, and the last 3 years working in our TLS system, the first year as a model coach, the second year as a peer coach with one release day, working with different coaches and different teachers to improve student achievement and to close the achievement gap, as well as working through proficiency scales and other district-wide initiatives. In terms of education, I hold several degrees, the first of which is a BA from Iowa in history. The second is a BS in social science from Upper Iowa University. The second is a master's degree in education from Upper Iowa. The next is a applied studies certificate in ed leadership from UNI, and I'm currently 2 classes and a dissertation away from my doctorate in educational leadership. And so that just gives you a little bit about me, as well as some of my opportunities here at Baxter. All right, so the first question is broken down into 2 different parts, or 2 different ways that I wanted to address answering this. And so the first thing I wanted to look at was, what is the role of a coach in student achievement and in the TLS system? And currently I've been serving in this role, one released day a month, helping teachers grow their individual abilities as well as their staff accountability and things like proficiency scales, rubric scoring guides, instructional strategies, those kind of things. And so what I see the role of the coach in student achievement in our new system is to use research-based instructional strategies to ensure student engagement, understanding, and growth. And so that can be done in a multitude of ways. Having taught an adjunct at the college level, as well as worked through several different programs in educational leadership, the idea of making sure that you have a classroom and classroom instructors that are using research-based instructional strategies is very important. And so the idea is that the peer coach should be helping the teacher engage in developing tightly aligned assessment, instruction, and understanding of the Iowa core standards, making sure that our classrooms are rigorous and relevant, and that can be done in a multitude of ways. UBD, for example, or Understanding by Design, which I've taught post-secondary course in, as well as worked with several teachers in planning backwards, building our assessments, creating tightly aligned classroom instruction, assessment, and standards. The next part of that would be introduce and implement the idea of data-driven instruction, which is something I've done in my classroom. The idea of collecting pre-assessment, post-assessment work to make sure that students are making growth, as well as using time to our advantage, such as Bolt and Win, to take that data and then differentiate and create instructional plans that will meet the needs of all of our students, including students who are served on our 3 different MTSS levels, as well as special education. I've worked pretty tightly with both of our middle school special education teachers this year in building and creating highly specialized and effective instruction to grow skills for students in the special education classroom, as well as working with general education teachers to help grow students who are not proficient or who are not meeting standards and pushing that forward. And that's coming from the idea of using data-driven instruction from classroom data, as well as things like the MAP test, Iowa assessment, and in some cases ACT. Another point that goes along with that would be assist teachers in planning of highly effective units that are aligned to district and state requirements. So one of those things that you need to first of all go through in helping with student achievement is, what do assessments look like? Do assessments match the teaching or instructional style? For example, are you giving a paper and pencil test when you haven't given any paper and pencil notes or formative assessments or anything like that? Making sure that assessments are differentiated, give student choice. There's the idea of outside the box assessment, as well as making sure with SBG and SRG that we're meeting different levels of 1, 2, 3, and 4 to make sure that we're scaffolding, as well as building assessments that meet each of those parts of the standard to ensure that students are meeting those standards. And then how do we ensure all students are getting what they need? That's done through differentiation, that's done through collaboration, that's done through open communication with teachers, with administrators, with peer coaches. The idea of having a wide variety of students in our classrooms, including special education students, is important to make sure we're cooperating, collaborating, and communicating with all involved, as well as parents, stakeholders, those people that need to be notified when students are not getting what they need. And that can be done in a multitude of ways. As the peer coach, it would be important to bring those people together to make sure we're getting teachers what they need, the strategies, the skills, the resources to be able to engage students in a highly effective way. The second part of that is create open and honest dialogue about instruction, assessment, and Iowa Core, which is something that we've started with our strategic plan here at Baxter, but something that we can move forward on an individual basis with helping teachers, because teachers fall in all kinds of different areas of their instruction. Similar to students, it's important to differentiate and help give opportunities for teachers to receive feedback, request specialized help, the things that they need to become more successful. It's that idea of growing from good to great, which is something that we've talked about quite a bit in our professional learning so far this year. But the idea of helping teachers to create instruction that's highly effective, that's highly engaging, that's research-based, that's data-driven, to make sure that our assessments are actually measuring what students know and can do, not just what sort of behaviors they have, which SRG and SBG will be removing, and making sure that we're aligning things to the core. And that can be done through the new NGSS standards in science, the new social studies standards, or making sure that we're looking at things like the art standards that are very vague and having to find something that matches up with them. Those kind of things are what's really important in helping with student achievement. So as I said, this is a two-part question. The other part is closing the achievement gap, and that will be answered here. So closing the achievement gap really bases on collaboration with teachers to identify students who are non-proficient or who are not meeting standards. Typically, we know the students who receive MTSS, level 3, or the students who are receiving special education, that they're not proficient. However, we're missing a large chunk of our students who are near proficient, they're hovering right around it, or they're not proficient at all. And with the SRG, SBG standards, what we're finding is that students oftentimes aren't meeting those standards for a variety of reasons. And so to help that, the peer coach would be important in creating opportunities for students to receive small group or one-on-one instruction during BOLT, WIN, possibly before and after school, or in the case of middle school, lab times, using specific teaching strategies to help improve retention and content skills. For example, graphic organizers, reading strategies. Graphic organizers are one of my passions. That's something that I've done a lot with in my classroom, as well as worked with my coachees this year and last year on implementing in classrooms. It's something I've done a lot of research on. It's my dissertation topic. It was my master's thesis topic. And the idea of how do we implement graphic organizers and reading strategies, not just in the literature classroom, not just in the English classroom, but across all content, to ensure that students are receiving the skill instruction they need to build those skills so then they can understand the content and work from there. Also introducing research-based practices like Edward de Bono thinking skills, which incorporate art and outside-the-box thinking with the idea of discovery and critical thinking skills, using Marzano and his reading and writing strategies that we've all been lucky enough to get to work through in some of our professional learning, including writing strategies from people like Dr. Michael Schmoker, who is the piloting man on Read, Write, and Discuss, which gives students the opportunity to read something, talk in a group, write about it, receive feedback, those kind of things, and make sure that we're ensuring assessment styles are matching our instructional styles, which I mentioned before. Oftentimes you find that teachers are willing to give this huge multiple choice test, but there's not really any sort of paper and pencil type of learning during the unit. And then the other thing that's really important in closing the achievement gap is the importance of appropriate and timely feedback. So a lot of times students will get a paper back, it'll say 72 C+ on it, and that's all they see. There's no opportunity for them to receive feedback, and when it does come, it might be a week or 2 weeks later, which by then teachers have moved on. And so there's really an importance with SBG and SRG for teachers to give student feedback that's meaningful, that's timely, that opens up a dialogue as to skills they can improve on, areas in the content that they're lacking that they need improvement on, those sort of things. So feedback should be specific to build specific skills or content knowledge, as I mentioned. That can be something as simple as you need more support with your thesis, right? Or it could be something like, you're really understanding the content, but I'm not seeing it because you're not specific enough. For example, in social studies, oftentimes we don't see enough of the perspectives or things like that. And then it's important to make sure that students are understanding expectations, requirements, those sort of things. So working with teachers to ensure that all students are receiving what they need when they need it will be a big step forward in closing that achievement gap, as well as seeing our scores improve. We've seen that so far with research-based instructional strategies, IPI practices, those sort of things, but just continuing that, but ramping it up and making it a little bit more accountable in terms of what teachers are truly doing. All right, so then the second question, primary areas of work for an instructional coach to help build capacities to meet student needs, and meeting student needs are what we do as teachers. And I've done several things to help that and willing to do to help that. One of those is I've taught pre-service and graduate students about understanding by design, assessment to meet the needs of diverse learners. I can use this knowledge, I will use this knowledge to engage teachers in reflective teaching practices, data-driven instruction, understanding how student work aligns with content and course standards. That's essential. If teachers aren't reflective, if they're not willing to change, students are still going to miss the same stuff year after year after year. And the willingness of teachers to change, to look at their stuff and be reflective can be really hard. And so the idea of opening up a communication channel with teachers to truly look at what they're doing and how they're doing it goes a long way in meeting the needs of students. I currently work with the TLS system, as I mentioned before, to meet the instructional needs of both gen ed and special ed students. I've worked with a lot of CTE people, including art, music, ag, as well as special education. And I've worked with those teachers to create objective grading criteria. So proficiency scales, scoring guides, and rubrics, taking the subjectivity out of grading to truly see what students know. That way we can make sure that we're looking at, like with the accountability report card, what are teachers and students needing in terms of behavior, and what are they needing in terms of content building or skill building. I've also assisted in creating specially designed instruction for students served in special ed and intensive MTSS. I've worked with both our special education teachers in the middle school to build instructional plans, specially designed instruction that's aimed at building skills to allow students to become proficient. I've also taken a lot of those strategies and applied them in the general education classroom with general education teachers, as well as co-teaching. So the opportunity to co-teach, I've done some of that. I did some of that in my previous position. When you co-teach proven strategies and create differentiated instruction, using model teaching, allowing the special education teacher or general education teacher a chance to teach cross-curricular, give students that chance to have their needs met in terms of not only that specific classroom, but possibly another skill lacking area. And then the third one here is that I have experience in teaching both special ed and general education at the high school and middle school level, which has given me a vast knowledge and understanding of what students need to be successful in school, which I've applied through the peer coaching already, as well as in my own classroom. The ability to collaborate with teachers to design instruction that is instructionally level appropriate, which is really important in meeting the needs of students. We have a gamut of students in Baxter, ranging from very low to very high. How are we meeting the needs of those? We don't want to just focus on the lower level students, the students who are falling underneath. We want to make sure we're also focusing on those students who are high achievers, the high flyers. How do we make sure that those students are getting what they need? This question is addressing both of those. And then I've also worked to create cross-curricular units, including units on Sleepy Hollow, looking at the historical perspective as well as the written and reading perspective. I've worked with my peer coaches in terms of an art project within a history unit. Also worked with special education teachers to create co-taught classroom situations that were beneficial to all students using small group instruction and those sort of things. And so that's the first part of this question. The second part is making sure that you're identifying essential components. And that can be done in a variety of ways. But the biggest way to do that is to make sure quality instruction is identified through alignment, student engagement, and content-specific instruction. The students need to be able to critically think, problem solve, and generalize skills. And that's something that we need to make sure that our teachers are doing. We need to make sure that our students are seeing that, that everyone's able to move towards that. The higher level of Bloom's, the higher rigor and relevance that we're talking about. And that's identified through multiple observations. And I'm a big proponent of getting in classrooms. You have to see what's going on. You have to have dialogue. You have to have open and honest communication with teachers to see what they're thinking, what their data's doing. And then the other part of it is to make sure you're visible. Make sure that you're out there so that you can have interactions with teachers, with students to make sure you understand what's going on in those classrooms, to make sure that teachers understand that you're willing to work for them and with them.